Well, hey everybody, welcome back to Trevette Knots. This is the part 2 continuation of We're Not Talking with Jamie White. I hope you enjoy it.
What's the guy's name that did the videos? I think was he on the Peking back in the 1930s? And
Irving Johnson.
Irving Johnson. He makes the point that he had to learn the names of every line and all the rigging in German because the skipper was German and you had to know it in German because they weren't going to communicate it or translate it to English for you.
Yes. Oh, exactly. You know, and it's interesting that there was also a particular order, the way that the rigging is set up on a ship, the running rigging, you know, the clewlin, clew garnet, buntlins, leechlins, reef tackle, etc. There was always a particular order that was necessitated a little bit by geometry, you know, because the higher something is aloft, the farther aft it is. Otherwise, if it's forward, then you're going to cross lines, right? You want to have, and then also because there were so many different nationalities on board. If Irving Johnson went from the Peking to another vessel, say to the Queen Margaret or the Mashulu, he would kind of have a very good idea. It goes, you know, clew, bunt, leech. He would know that, okay, here's the clew garnet, so now I know what the next ones are. I may not know what their name in German is, but I kind of have an idea as to how attack is performed or when you wear ships, so he can anticipate what the next command will be and be near that area of the pin rail that you're going to have to work the rigging. But
years ago, a good buddy of mine who's since passed away, God bless him, Lee Atkins, he had a book that had been passed down in his family from his grandfather, who was Russian. And it was an English written book, but it was called, and I've tried to look this up and haven't been able to find, there must be another book by the same name, but it was called The Lore of Sail. And it was a coffee table sized book, and it was rigging of everything square rigged that I've ever seen. And I wanted that book so bad. And he didn't care about it from the sailing characteristic as much as it was a family item. And he passed away. Who knows whatever happened to that book, but I've never been able to find it.
That is a wonderful book, you know, and there are a lot of books that I've used over the years, like on the waiver tree restoration, on Glen Lee as well, especially on the Glen Lee, because there was really nothing there. You know, she, as I mentioned to you last night, she is probably my favorite vessel that I've rigged because it was the first one that I did from basically, you know, where do we start? The ship was built 1896 on the River Clyde. She was launched as the Glen Lee. She sailed under the Red Duster, you know, as a British merchant vessel, deep waterman, until the 1920s. She was bought by Italians. They put an engine in her, renamed her Clara Stella. She sailed for a couple of years as Clara Stella. Then she was bought by Franco, General Franco and the Spanish Navy, and turned into their sail training ship and renamed Galatea. Well, you figure that on a naval sail training vessel, you're going to have 300 people. The Isle of Mont, or the Glen Lee, became Isle of Mont, then she became Clara Stella. When she was sailing in that configuration, you might have a crew of 28. So you don't need all the extra water tankage. You don't need a bigger galley. You don't need more crew berthing. So what they ended up doing was they removed the original deck houses and they made them bigger. They changed this, they changed that. They put a flying bridge just afore the mizzen mast so that, you know, the officers could practice docking, I guess, or whatnot. They put depth charge racks on her. So a lot of things were changed, and impacted the rigging as well. So leads were different. So, you know, I would take a look at historic photographs of the Isle of Mont. There was, and this is why I tell people that historic photographs are so vitally important. And some of the best ones are crew photographs on board vessels, because, you know, I don't care about the particular crew member, but I'm looking at the block over their shoulder and how that was set up, you know. But we had this wonderful glass plate negative at the Monterey Maritime Museum down just south of San Francisco, that a wonderful historian that worked at San Francisco Maritime, Ted Miles, had discovered and let me know about. So our photography department at the Maritime Museum in San Francisco took the glass plate negative and blew it up. So I had an image that was like 65, 70 megabytes. So I could zoom in on that, and I could tell you that there were diamonds on the blocks instead of stars, for instance.
Really?
So I could see how particular items were set up, because this was vitally important, since so much of the deck configuration, you know, where chain plates were, where eye bolts were, that were dead ends for, like, you know, upper topsail halyard, you know, where they would shack the deck. So all these things had gotten shifted. And the other thing that I enjoy, and we talked about this yesterday, is the detective work involved in these restorations. So I would go below deck and I could look up, and if I saw a hole that had been drilled versus a hole that had been punched, I knew that the drilled hole was probably the Spanish. The punched hole was probably because, you know, they would have punched the plate during the original construction. The other thing, if it was a larger hole, they would have just done several punches, you know, so you'd have more of a ragged edge. So by utilizing that, by looking at photographs, we were able to piece everything together, because I'll send you some photographs that maybe you can include in this. So yeah, it'd be great, because when I first saw the ship, there had been backing up. She sailed as sail training vessel until I think sometime in the 1960s. Then she was laid up shoreside as a sail training vessel, an officer training vessel. And then she kind of became the redheaded stepchild. I can say that because I was a redhead at one time. Not a stepchild, but a redhead. Redhead, I should say. She became kind of, what are we going to do with her now? Because they were no longer using her to train officers and crew, and she was alongside in Seville. People came aboard and stole bronze portholes and anything bronze. Someone stole a sea cock, and that flooded the vessel, and she actually sank. So then they refloated her, and then she broke her moorings and was drifting across the harbor and banged into another ship. So the stem actually had a big divot in it where she had hit the other ship. So there were all these bits. But the worst part for a rigger was they took the masts out, cut them into 20 and 30 foot lengths, 40 foot lengths, and just threw them in a pile, a bunch of weeds. So when we were doing the restoration, we wanted to use as much original material as possible. You know, all the wire had been cut up, we couldn't use it.
Yeah.
The bottle screws, turnbuckles, etc., had been, you know, they were so old, they had been rusted, they were no longer usable. But we got the masts into Glasgow, we were at Yorkhill Quay, and there was a bonded whiskey warehouse that was used for you know, whiskey storage or whatever in years past. And that's where we set up the rigging loft, which I thought was kind of appropriate for a bunch of sailors. And so we had these cut up spars, you know, like the foreyard was in 5 sections. The mainmast, the lower mainmast was in 4 sections, and the topmast was in 3 sections. So we had to figure out, do they go like this or like that? Or where does this one go? So the detective work was fascinating, but what was even more fascinating is how inventive and creative people are. One of the workers that I had a good time to work with, who was our welder, Pat. I don't know if he came up with the idea or Charlie McNamara, who came up with the idea. Now, Charlie McNamara, I met him the first day I was in Scotland. He was retired boss rigger at John Brown Shipyard. He had re-rigged the Queen Mary after World War II. And he comes up to me and he says, right, so you're the Yank they hired to rig my ship? And I just went, whoa. Anyway, he and I became very good friends because I said, well, Charlie, you know, the techniques you're using were applicable in 30s and 40s. We're back in the 1890s and it's a little different, you know, so that, and he said, okay, but I'm going to be watching you. But we became very, very good friends. But I remember just seeing the ship and going, how are we going to get this all together? And they came up with this ingenious method. If you figure you have, you know, your, let me use this. Let's say this is, you know, one of the mast sections. What they did is they put a piece of wood, and I'll send you a picture of this. They put a piece of wood in here and a piece of tin, and exactly in the center, they drilled a hole, a small hole. And then they did the same thing here at this end. So they were set up on these trolleys. With overhead gantries. So we had chain falls coming down and we had these trolleys. So we could maneuver the mast in a whole bunch of different ways. So you had your base piece, like the foot of the mast. You had the wood here, and then we had the second section, and it would come and we joined them together by putting a smaller diameter pipe inside that was in kind of an insert. You know, it got plug welded, and then there were 8 or 9 passes where the butt joint was, and they were all recertified by Lloyd's of London. You know, they did radiograph and
Really?
to check the thing. But I was worried that, sure, we have the mast together, but if they were slightly at an angle, when you're looking aloft, you'd go, my God, the mast is kind of has a dog leg to it. So, but I didn't need to worry because they were so creative. Instead of using lasers or high-tech stuff, they used the wood and the tin, so that they put a light source at this end. And then when the two got joined together, you would had this cloth and you would look through, and when you could see the light through that piece of tin, you knew everything was lined up. They tapped it, they plug welded it, and then we went to the next section. And if you go to Glasgow and visit the ship, you would have no idea that those masts were put together like that. Now, the thing is that it was difficult using plans, because, you know, we had some plans of Galatea, because now the masts are probably, I don't know, 3 feet shorter than they would have been, because when the masts were cut up, they did not do a real clean job. They had a guy with a torch and he just cut it. So it was pretty ragged. So we had to clean the end off here, might lose 2 inches. Had to clean the end off here, lose 2 inches, sleeve it together. So that's maybe 4 or 5 inches, another 4 or 5 inches, another. So at the end of the day, that's, you know,
that added up.
gets into real inches.
We're subtracted out. Yeah.
I just thought it was ingenious to do it that way. And the next time I'm faced with that, I'll know how to put the mast.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it just was a wonderful experience. With the best part was I'd be up in the rig on Glenlee supervising or doing something, because my dear friend Steve Hyman, who was rigging foreman and one of the most talented riggers I ever met, he also was the fellow responsible for the beautiful rig on the Alyssa, the bark Alyssa down in Galveston. Steve and Doug McLean really did a wonderful job on all the iron work and fabrication.
Yeah.
But it's just been a lot of fun.
I can imagine, and it's funny because I I'm sure you didn't start out thinking, well, I want to be a master rigger on a square rigged vessels. That, yeah, I mean, who knew what that was
Yeah.
as a
Well,
young
there's
fellow?
there's really no, in this country, no certification program. I guess, there is in the Navy or possibly at shipyards, if you're the master rigger at a naval shipyard or whatnot. But, for the kind of rigging that I've been involved with the restorations, where it's 19th century.
Yeah.
So it's okay. How do you clap on a wire rope, seizing, turning in splices, serving, just a lot of the subtleties of traditional rigging, is not really institutionalized in this country. There is no certification. I'm a master rigger. So, people kind of give you that moniker, and over time, your resume will speak for itself. So, I guess now I would consider myself a master rigger in that regard, because, I've taken, like the Glen Lee, basically a hull, and we have a rig in her that is identical to the rig that she sailed with when she was going around Cape Horn. And the reason why I can tell you that it's identical is some of the research we did. This is the glass plate negative. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah.
Of Islamont. So I have that as like a 70 megabyte file. I can really zoom in. But more importantly, we were able to find documents in the Mitchell Library in Glasgow. This is the certificate for steel wire rigging that was supplied to Lloyd's of London. So I knew exactly, it was 6 strand, 6x7. It was, 1 3/8 in diameter.
Cool.
And then from that, everything else is size. So, to gallant royal backstays, et cetera, topmast shrouds are all sized off the biggest piece of rigging. So people ask me, well, could the Glen Lee go sailing? Yeah, she has the rig that she sailed around Cape Horn with, the exact same wire, the same techniques. The masts are really strong now, especially with all the sleeving. And most importantly, one of the wonderful things about Glen Lee is she has a new bottom. In the, I forget, it was maybe in the late 70s or early 80s. I can't remember now, but the Olympics were held in Barcelona.
Yep.
And the Spanish government said, well, we have the old deteriorated Galatea. Why don't we restore her and she can be like this tall ship and we have parades and whatnot. So they dry docked her and they replated the entire bottom from waterline below, replated.
Really?
Yeah, she has a brand new bottom. So talk about a ship that could go sailing. And she has a couple of sails. The sailmakers of Pommern, another Clyde-built ship in Finland that Mikko probably is aware of. They have a group of old timers that are keeping alive the tradition of hand seaming, of hand building a sail. And they have built several topsails and a couple of staysails, I think, maybe a spanker for the Glen Lee so that they can do demonstrations, whatnot. But she certainly could go sailing.
That's awesome.
It's a lot of fun. Yeah. I don't know if, can you see that?
Yeah.
So the top picture is the Galatea sailing for the Spanish Navy, sail training.
Okay, now is that two fully rigged square masts, and then
she's fully rigged. And then this is what,
and that's considered like. What, a bark?
Yes, she's a bark. Well, you don't say 3-masted bark. It's assumed the bark has to be 3-masted. So if there's 4 masts, that's when you'll say 4-masted bark. But to say a 3-masted bark is like something is cold, very cold. Yeah,
exactly. I'm with you. Yeah.
But you can see that here she is sailing as the Galatea, and then this is what she looked like when the Clyde Maritime Trust took her over.
Really?
You can see this flying bridge going across. There's depth charge racks. They put a steel cover over the steering gear, which was wonderful because, that saved the original steering gear.
Yeah.
But it was just crazy. So that's what she looked like when my first day.
Cool.
She had her whole, they did
Okay.
a maintenance coat just to make her look better.
Yeah.
And we just, started restoring her. But very proud of that job. The crew did a remarkable job. And, on Facebook yesterday, I posted some fancy work that I think you saw.
Yeah. I shared it.
And probably my biggest thrill of the Glenlee restoration, besides meeting some wonderful Scots, Hamish Hardy and Dr. Mason and my dear friend Ian McDonald, who were all on the board of directors, and the people that I got to work with, was my favorite experience was young Andrew Eyre. He started off. He was, I think, an apprentice, or he was, a beginner ship fitter or welder in one of the yards. And when the yards closed down on the Clyde, put him out of work. So he was on the dole, and part of the Heritage Lottery money that was utilized for the Glenlee restoration, they wanted to put to work people that were on the dole, So as I mentioned to you, I trained this crew. I had about 8 or 9 fellows, and none of them had any square rig, had ever seen a square rigger. And Andy was down in the bilges as kind of a bilge rat, mucking out the bilges, and jackhammering concrete. What the Spanish had done, it was interesting, because they couldn't have a lot of ballast down below in the normal place, because they needed extra larger water tanks and food stores, whatever. They put concrete ballast with pig iron in the frame bays on the side of the ship.
Yeah.
So part of the restoration was they spent a lot of time, like you could pay off a parking ticket in Glasgow by going down and volunteering. You'd jackhammer. So this is what Andy was doing. And I just recognized the way he held himself, the way that he was very self-effacing, somewhat quiet, but I could tell that he was there was something happening in there. And I chose him, asked him to become part of the rigging crew. He took to splicing wire better than anyone I've ever taught.
Really?
Wire teasings. He just was fantastic. And in the photograph that shows the Glenlee bell with the late His Royal Highness Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, who opened the ship and rang that bell rope that I made, there's a picture of Andy standing next to him. And God, I kind of tear up now just thinking about the journey that he has gone through with this ship, to be next to Prince Philip during that bell ringing. And now he became ship manager. So he's been in charge of the ship for a few years. So I need to give him a call and have, hey, slide me over. We need to do a checkup,
Yeah. I finally remembered what I was going to say. So I don't know. This is just, I do random, algorithms send you a lot of stuff on YouTube, but I found, I was probably looking for something on splicing, and there are these 2 guys in a warehouse with a gigantic, looks like a 6-inch diameter steel cable. They're splicing it with 6-foot long marlin spike levers, and just unbelievable. I mean, they're just working hard at it, hammering it with, probably a 5-pound sledge, and prying and pulling through with just massive effort. But did it.
No, it is it is amazing. The only problem I have with that mechanical kind of splicing, I think that's what gave splicing kind of a bad name, because I've had this talk with Steve Hyman and the late Brian Toss often. If you do a splice properly, a hand turned in Liverpool style splice, it's going to be 100% of the breaking strength of that wire. I mean, you can really, but now it needs to be done correctly. I talk about that in that Riddle of the Strands book that I showed you on wire splicing. all 6 strands need to bear equal load, which means they have to have equal tension within the body of the splice.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're using a big machine like that, you have no feeling, no sense of how tight or how loose something is, because the machine is just punching in and you're passing the wire in it. So I don't think you can gain the same strength or percentage of strength that you can when you hand splice something. But true, and the other thing too that's I'll tell you this quick little story on the Bart Glen Lee restoration. I was mentioning that there were a lot of thefts happening, stealing bronze and whatnot.
Yeah.
She was just, well, we saw her condition. She was an old derelict, and all of her port lights, the bronze, beautiful port lights, had been stolen. And so I remember it was like it was yesterday. I was talking to a couple of suppliers from they call it the Black Country in England, which is the industrial area of England, where they had a lot of turnbuckles and bottle screws are made there, and big iron fittings and forgings and such. And we needed to replace all the bottle screws. I mean, there were like 150 bottle screws we needed. These were big bottle screws, not little ones like on my Flick 20. Yeah. So I had this one salesman in from a firm, and we were talking about that, and I forget how it came up, but someone in the office at that time mentioned, about bronze portholes. And we had found one of the portholes, one of the thieves. There was probably a policeman or someone came aboard, had dropped the porthole in the bilge, and over time it had gotten buried with dust and detritus of all description. So there was one original port. And he looked at that and he says, blimey, that looks like one of ours. And he took out his penknife and he scraped some of the tarnish. Well, okay, that's one of our numbers. And he scraped over here. That's the series or whatever. And about a week later, he called us and he said, we still have the molds for those port lights. And they recast all the port lights. They also recast the belfry that the bell is hanging in with the bell rope that you saw the photograph of.
Really?
Yeah. And it's
that's
because
amazing.
They didn't throw stuff away. And that's the problem here is once something becomes obsolete, it just gets tossed. In another 100 years, how are you going to play an 8-track?
I don't know that you could now.
Yeah,
that.
that real popular Barry Manilow 8-track that you've always loved. How are you going to play it?
That's right, and of course, and it stops right in the middle and switches to the next track.
Yeah.
Song.
But those are things that I find interesting. The kind of the difference mindset when I was in Britain versus what I've experienced here. Let's just try something new and get rid of the old. It's beneficial to keep that old stuff around, especially in the situation I just described.
Yeah. That's amazing, the stuff that they found down at Jamestown. Those ships, they didn't have the plans for them from any historical records here, but from England, because it was an English expedition. The East India Company, I guess, was it? No, I mean, that was I think after that. But anyway, they were able to get pretty close to what those ships were when they replicated them. And but what's cool? One of the other cool thing is that down at Yorktown, on a fairly regular basis, at least once a summer, you'll see a tall ship down there that you can go down and visit. The Colmarnicle was down a couple of years ago, and I can't think what else. But when Opsail happened, and the Opsail 2000 was the last one. Opsail. I was racing on a J30 out of Hampton Yacht Club at that time, and I was invited with the rest of the crew to go out and spend the day. We sailed out of Hampton Roads into the ocean before they shut it down for the parade of ships coming in, and a buddy of mine videoed the whole thing, and we just enjoyed the day watching every single one of those ships come by within just a couple of 100 yards. Yeah, it was a blast.
Oh, yeah, no, they are beautiful when you see them, especially when they're in a parade situation where they're
Yeah.
Coming line abreast almost and just sailing into the harbor. Just absolutely magnificent. And it helped revitalize a lot of the inner harbors. I mean, Baltimore inner harbor, just the waterfronts were rediscovered in a lot of cities, and that was a boon for the type of stuff that we do. Because when I first got involved in this crazy business after the crazy bikini business, there were not as many replicas. I mean, the Calmer Nickel had not been built, the Lady Washington had not been built, the Californian had not been built, just on and on and on. And now there's so many more opportunities, for people just getting involved in the trade and the craft to become, well versed in how you sail and how you maintain these vessels.
Well, I'm really thankful that there were people that had the idea and garnered the money from whatever sources it came from to restore some of these great old vessels that were still around, whether I know you're mentioning some of those that were actually just rebuilt. I mean, completely new built, but off of an old design or off of an old plans. But the old vessels that the old iron hulled vessels that were still set in line in disrepair somewhere, that someone said, "Hey, let's fix that." Yeah.
No, it
wonderful that that's happened.
It is amazing. It really is. One of the other things growing up, I was born in Santa Monica and grew up in Palos Verdes, which is kind of at the end of Santa Monica Bay, a little peninsula down in Southern California, Los Angeles. And, when I was just a kid, there still were, some of Hollywood's fleet around, some of the vessels that were like Baltic traders, and they had brought from Denmark, big schooners that, like for Mutiny of the Bounty, the Clark Gable, Charles Laughton movie, they would change the hull configuration, they would rebuild and turn them in a schooner into a square rigger. And it was just fascinating if you look at the history of, Hollywood's Navy, and then compared to now, like, the Pirates of the Caribbean flicks. I was involved in Pirates, which one? 2 and 3. Yeah.
Well, so now with that, were those hulls and all that, was that just all stage stuff?
There were a lot of set pieces. If we were in studio filming, they were just set pieces. So everything was fake. And the actual sailing ones were either a barge or they had an offshore supply vessel, that's used in the oil industry. And they basically welded sponsons onto it and built a hull around that. So when you look at the Black Pearl, there's an offshore supply boat inside actually driving.
Really?
And it was operated by remote control, by like a little radio control thing. It was incredible how they did that, and everything was basically Hollywood. It was styrofoam and thin wood and fiberglass, and it is incredible what they were able to do. And the mast ended right above the lower yard and the doubling. Everything above that, like if you see photographs, like I really get a kick on some of the Facebook groups I'm involved with. They're always showing the Black Pearl in these ships, and people really think that that's like the real Black Pearl. And the mast is truncated. There's nothing above, because that all was done computer generated.
Sure, CGI. Yeah,
CGI. And it was, but it was fascinating from filming that I had done on Bounty, back when the Steadicam first came out, and then seeing what they were doing in Hollywood now with the CGI is just absolutely staggering. So, and the money involved, we were on Stranger Tides, which was one of the ones that I was involved with. We did, the work and filming in Hawaii. And I remember the art department, there were a whole bunch of skeletons on the, oh God, what was the name of Blackbeard's ship? I can't think of it right now.
The Queen Anne's Revenge.
Queen Anne's Revenge, features in the movie. And so there are these gold leaf skeletons all around, some breathing fire and whatnot. And I remember we were doing some of the rigging, we were fitting out a lateen yard or something, and the art department is out in the trade winds gold leafing. So they would take, gold leaf and boom, it'd blow away and but I mean, the film's going to make $1 billion. So what are about, 300 books of gold leaf or whatever, but
yeah.
At break time, there was like some chain link fences around because we were kind of in a shipyard, doing all the construction. And I would gather gold. I still have gold leaf from that movie. I
Really?
put it in a little envelope because it was stuck on the chain link fence. The wind would blow it. But the money involved is just staggering.
Yeah.
With Hollywood productions, and then you have like the HMS Surprise that was used in the movie. What was the name of that with Russell Crowe?
Master and Commander.
That's it. Yeah.
I was going to ask you about that.
That was so historically accurate. She was originally built as the Rose, and she's quite an extraordinary vessel. And
what's the name of that vessel?
It was originally the HMS Rose.
Yes. Okay. I remembered that.
Yeah. Now it's the Surprise, HMS Surprise.
HMS Surprise.
She's down.
Where is she?
San Diego, at the San Diego Maritime Museum, along with California and the Star of India. And
yeah.
I've been involved with San Diego for a long time.
Yeah.
And I've done, I do rig surveys for them, and I was down a couple of years ago and did a rig survey on the Rose, and there was a lot of Hollywood on her, but it looked the part, unless you were really nitpicking, you couldn't tell. So it was really well done.
That's cool. So what have you got planned for the rest of your day?
Well, I am Stropping Blocks.
And that's going where?
Or that, I'm probably going to sell them.
All right.
I've got about 20 of these, and
now sell them to who?
I've got whole
Just
drawers
for cool to have around the house.
Well, a lot of people have traditional boats, so I'm gonna just put them on eBay. But you can see that it's a proper little seasoning and splice. Now I did a video on how I do my short splice on these strops a particular way, where how you marry for a short splice.
Yeah.
I actually tie an overhand knot in these so that it locks it in place, because short splicing, you've got to kind of hold it together and it wants to come apart until you get those first tucks done.
Yeah.
If you do an overhand knot, and I'll probably post the video on Facebook.
First pass, do an overhand knot instead of just a single play.
But more importantly, the other interesting thing about doing an overhand knot, one of these, I don't know if you can really see it, but it forms a little ridge on the inside.
Okay.
So that it fits in the score of the block quite nicely.
All right.
Really nice. So anyway, that and I might make another crew coercion device, little cat of nine tails.
Yeah.
Blood knots.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I fail to do the dishes properly,
there you go. You need to hide that.
Yes, I am disciplined. So it'll be. How about you? What activities will you be doing?
This frame behind me, that's what I was going to show you. This is, I showed some details on the wooden part of it. This is all covered up now. When I was talking to Des, but now it's covered in canvas, but kind of thick, which is fine. Doesn't matter. It just means I have more to cover on this edge. Because it still doesn't really weigh that much because it's just pine. But
Yeah.
I really like the fact that it's only a 6-inch dimension here. For
Yes.
8 by 10 to be around an 8 by 10. I think it's going to look proportionally a lot nicer.
I like that.
Than
I like the way you construct your frames too.
Well, it's funny. I just started doing that way. I think I'll probably continue. I might use thinner materials and just sandwich in some Luan. Same thing, same strength, a little thinner. But I've got, I took this from Skip. I'm just, like, this is the inner band. Yeah, we'll go on that inside.
Yep.
And then here's my Russian. That's
excellent.
And then I have a couple of bags here that I'm not sure what I'm going to use.
Got it.
I'm fine until I decide what looks right, and then I'll stick it together.
Indeed. Well, speaking of Russian Senate, I'm doing a little work on some Russian Senate.
There you go.
Yeah. But
hey, so listen, let me show you. Bring that back over and let me show you something. I know you've tied Russian. I picked this up from Skip. If you look at a picture I did, if instead of using that clamp that you have, take your left hand and go right straight up. Where you have the cleat, no, keep moving out this way. Yeah, that. If you just here, let me show you this. I started doing this. It is easier. See this?
Yeah.
4-ounce weight. You could use a 3-ounce weight or a 2-ounce weight and an alligator clip and just hang that over there and weight it with this. You'll get consistent tensioning. And it is easier.
Cool.
You don't have to clamp it. I was using I think I have it landed somewhere. I was using a cam cleat, a cam cleat that I can just stick it through there.
Yeah.
But
I use this little.
It takes no more time. But if you just alligator clip it and hang it over like that,
I got my little weight right here. I can use that.
Man, it works.
Thinker.
It is easier, and it gives consistent tension throughout.
That sounds good. That sounds great. I like seeing that you use baggies just like I do. I'm trying to find some of my. I do the same thing. Just full of the stuff.
And if you're doing cotton, and you're going to be leaving it white, it's kind of important. But the other thing too with using cotton is if you're going to leave it plain, you've got to bleach it. Unless you're using all the same size line from the same spool, because it varies.
Yep.
And,
all the shades and everything, plus oils in your hand.
But with this, this is all going to be in a custom mixed shellac. So I could get it dirty and it wouldn't matter. But a lot of what I have done has been just in natural cotton, and you do end up having to bleach it somewhere or another to get it all the same.
I think I'll also be doing some of my Spritzel Jimmy genuine Stockholm tar.
Oh, do you make that?
I didn't make the tar, but yeah, I do the whole little thing and put the warning on the back, not for human consumption.
Yeah. Don't eat it.
being married to an attorney, she made sure.
Yes, please put the disclaimer.
Please with a disclaimer. And then,
Yeah.
I've got, like you, I just have projects sitting around half finished. Here's
Yeah.
a bottle I started 20 years ago.
Cool.
Lamb's rum. I liked it because it has this kind of interesting shape, an octagonal shape, so that you can have your ribs lined up.
Cool. Yeah.
Versus, if you're doing a, Pusser's bottle.
Yeah. Have you seen?
So,
let me show you something. Do you know who Dan DeMott is?
No.
On Instagram, he goes by Grumpy Ragnar. When Skip and I were finishing up doing the C&O's Pentagon frame, check that out.
Whoa!
Beautiful work. He does really nice work, and it's all Pussers. And we'll stop.
I love the Pusser bottle is fantastic.
Yeah. And I'm guessing that he's sober sometimes, or if he's drinking all of this Pussers, because he produces a lot of these, and he does really nice grafting. But and they're all empty, so who knows?
Who knows? Yeah,
he's a good guy. His work is really, really good. So eventually, when Skip and I get up to the Pentagon, I'm taking this as his gift to the CNO. I suspect that if I was a CNO, I would take it.
I think so. I think
nice
so.
little gift to take home. Yeah.
No, it was talking about fancy work. As I mentioned, the most wonderful thing about the vocation that I've chosen or chose me or whatnot are the people that I met. It's just there's such an incredible mix of souls, and one of the most interesting, funny, wittiest people I ever met was Kit Africa, who I think I mentioned to you. He was
the name, yeah.
Yeah, Kit Africa. Talk about a very self-effacing fellow. You could probably spend days talking to him, and you would not know that he sailed with his father, Spike Africa, who was president of the Pacific Ocean. Spike sailed as Sterling Hayden's first mate on the voyage to Tahiti. He wrote a book called Wanderer. That is. That is a fantastic. If you've never read Wanderer, it is a must read for any sailor. It is just spectacular. Well, Kit, as a young boy, was sailing on Wanderer, and then over the years he became in Sausalito here in San Francisco Bay Area, just very adept at all things. I mean, he's such a clever, talented, creative fellow. He can build wooden boats. He can rig them. He can do artwork. I met him on the Lady Washington. We were both part of the rigging crew. And this chest that I talked about, this is the first chest that I made, the Beckett's and the chest. Well, I have in here carved James White rigger. That's carved right here.
Yeah.
And I remember I went up to the Lady Washington, set it down on my rigging bench, and Kit didn't say anything, but he kind of looked at it. Okay, we were talking, and we both shared kind of the same kind of warped sense of humor, so we got along quite well. Yeah. Well, the next morning, he comes into work and makes a big production, a big show. He takes his rigger box, which was a Washington State apple box that he had drawn Beckett's, where the holes are on the side.
Yeah.
He had drawn Beckett's on the side and wrote Kit Africa rigger, and he set it on the bench, and I felt so small. I'm going, look, this guy is a much more accomplished rigger than I was, at that time. Now hopefully I've gained a little bit more knowledge, but I'll never forget that. It was so funny. But once again, the people that really know, they don't need to let you know. It's the ones that are boastful that will tell you within the first 5 minutes of meeting you every ship they've been on and why you're doing something wrong. you know.
That kind of goes with the territory, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's refreshing to meet, you know, people like Kit or like that Captain Albright that I mentioned, you know, the pilot.
Yeah.
I mean, my God, he's fisted canvas going around Cape Horn, or Carl Cordham, you know, that sailed, you know, on the
People who have
Kyalami.
gone around Cape Horn in a square-rigged vessel are few and far between in today's
There are.
world. I mean,
There are.
there aren't that many that go in. Well, I mean, the guys like during the Vendée Globe or the any of the around the world sailing, they've got people kind of watching out for them as you know. I mean,
Oh yeah, I
you
mean, they
know,
probably have heart monitors on, you know, and they've got
yeah,
sat nav,
yeah.
weather facts, and it's
Not
just
during Robin Knox Johnson's voyage in '68, but you know,
no,
that's
you know,
radio, and you hope it worked.
I mean, or Josh Slocum relying on the ghost of Christopher Columbus to help him out. You know, he
Yeah.
didn't have, you know, sat nav, or you know,
No.
it was.
Oh, and eventually he just disappeared. You know,
Yeah.
that was that 1905 or something. He went back again to do it again, and never saw it, never seen it again.
Yeah, it just
Yeah.
I think his wife had passed away, and he's just decided
Yeah.
to go back to sea. But
Yeah.
yeah, these are it is wonderful when you think of the people that you come across, and you know, some of the another thing that's real enjoyable when you're a crew member on some of these vessels. I know on Bounty, when we were up at Expo in Vancouver we were there for about 6 weeks, and then we went into shipyard for a little while, and then started, you know, sailing towards Tahiti in Australia. We'd have people come aboard, and one of the things on Bounty, and she had to get special dispensation from Lloyd's of London and some of the societies to kind of camouflage safety gear, you know, during filming. So her life rafts, you know, there's those canister life rafts. If in the film, or, you know, the film I was involved with, the Captain Cook thing, they're in the background, but they're covered with canvas, and they look just like, you know, something, you know, a bit of equipment or rigging. And in port, I remember I was stitching up one of the covers, because, you know, we wanted everything hand stitched to make it look real. So the canister was uncovered, and it said, you know, life raft capacity 25 people. And I'll never forget, I'm, you know, sitting on the main hatch, and, you know, I got my, you know, sail hook, and I'm hand seaming this, you know, doing a flat seam. And this guy's looking at it, and it's always the guy. And he's trying to sound to his girlfriend that he knows what he's doing. He goes, boy, you know, I don't know, how can you fit 25 people on that thing? So he didn't realize that it blew up, you know, and I almost stabbed myself when, you know, he asked me that question. How do you fit 25 people on that? You know,
But it has a shrinking rag. It
actually
shrinks them down, and
blows up, you know, but you get that, and you know, just the experience. I was lucky. I haven't sailed around Cape Horn yet. I would really like to. Maybe on my 70th birthday, I'll do it.
Yeah, there you go.
Have to a couple of years to get my wife convinced that that this would be a good idea. You know, so she has a problem when I was riding a Vespa. So, you know, Cape Horn might be a little question. But, you know, I mean, it's all
Wear your helmet.
It's all presentation, right? But you know, I was lucky. I got to cross the equator 3 times on square rig, and I don't know if you noticed, I had my earring the first time. I was sailing on Bounty, and I knew we were going to be crossing the equator, so it was up in Vancouver. I bought a small an earring that I was going to put in when we crossed the equator. Well, you know, at the equator, there's no like shop you could go to have the little machine. So I'm going, well, what the heck? I'll just use a sail needle. So I had my sailmaker palm and the needle, and I had a piece of cork, and I put a little dot, and I looked in the mirror, and, you know, I punched it through, and oh my God, that thing bled like you wouldn't believe. The other problem was it's a triangular hole. So it doesn't, it took forever, especially in the tropics, for it to finally heal. But so that was an interesting interesting time when people asked me about the earring, you know.
Yeah.
But
That's cool.
What the heck? What can you do? You know.
Yeah. So when was the period you were doing Wavertree?
Wavertree was, let's see, it's about 5 years ago now,
Really?
2015, 2016. And, you know, I'm very, very proud of that. The project was managed just superbly by Jonathan Boulware, who's president of South Street Seaport, and he's captain in his own right. I've known Jonathan for a while, and I think a lot of people do. And I was just amazed at how he shepherded that process together, because the money came from the Department of Recs, the Department of Parks, you know, New York.
Okay.
And I think it was $14 million. So it was a substantial, it's
Yeah.
not like, you know, buying a used VW. That's some serious money. And I was director down at the Alyssa at the time, and the association, the Galveston Historic Foundation, wanted me to become more involved in fundraising and all of that. And that's not what I do. I don't want to talk to platinum blondes, Texas rich ladies with a poodle and driving their Cadillac about, you know, how they're going to donate more money to the cause. I'd much rather spend that money and oversee, et cetera. So Jonathan called me. I was in my office. He said, "Jamie, do you know we just got, you know, 14 million. We're going to be doing the restorations on, and we're going to be restoring the rig. And could you recommend someone?" I said, "Well, actually,
I know somebody.
Actually, I think I know somebody, you know." And you know, just weeks later, I was heading off to New York, and that was a wonderful job. The folks at Cadell Dry Dock were super. It's nice when you're in a project like that where everyone is a professional and have an idea as to how the job needs to be done. For instance, on some projects I won't mention, the board of directors, the woman who owns the local deli is on the board, and then a fellow who owns a barber shop or this, and they don't have any idea when you come in and say, "We need to renew the decks." And their response is, "Well, I mean, the roof on my house lasts 20 years. Why do the decks are only like 8 years old? Why do you need to renew them?" And, you know, the response is, "Well, you don't have hundreds of school kids walking on your roof every day." I mean, you know, it's just, whereas with the Glenlee and with Wavertree, they were all professional. They hired me because they knew that, you know, my background and you know, the successes that I had had. So they relied on my skill, and I wasn't second guessed. So you're able to really have an incredible, rewarding project. You know, one of the things people ask me, and I'll probably do another Facebook post on this. They go, "Well, why didn't you put a skysail yard, and why didn't you put a boom, a spanker boom on the Wavertree?" And the reason why is the historic photographs, the best ones that we have of Wavertree. We have one that I used for the rig restoration where she was at anchor, bottom of Telegraph Hill in San Francisco Bay. I think it was like in 1887, 1888. So she was just a couple of years old. She didn't have a spanker boom, and she didn't have the skysail yard. There's an earlier photograph that shows her with a spanker boom and a skysail yard, but that was like on her first voyage, and then they were removed, and all subsequent photographs and paintings, paintings that were commissioned by the captain of the ship or of the ship owner. None of them showed the boom. So that allowed us that historical research. And there was also a famous crew photograph. I think she was in Portland, Oregon or Washington, Lake Union or something. And it shows the crew at the break of poop at the ladder, doing their crew pose.
Yeah.
And you can see there's no boom. So all of these clues allowed us to do it. And more importantly, it wasn't second guessed, if at a later date they decide to take her back to that first earliest photograph, you can always put a boom on in a skysail yard, But so that was a most enjoyable. Plus, I was in New York. No. I was going in. I'd take the ferry, the Staten Island ferry, and I'd be in Lower Manhattan, and I had a wonderful time. Cool. And great group of folks. Would definitely do it again. And I had, as I mentioned, Tom Ward, who I had heard about, through the grapevine, but I'd never met Tom, and his lovely, his lovely wife, who is involved with sail making, and just Dale is an incredible sailmaker. And she came down and built the awning that's on the waiver tree. So. Cool. It was nice getting to know him, and I also got to train some people, so that was most rewarding. So it's funny because now anytime I see a movie, a lot of movies and TV series, there's that famous shot, they always fly over the Brooklyn Bridge and show you Lower Manhattan.
Yeah,
and I can see if the waiver tree, has togallants and royals, that is okay. This is after we did the re-rig. If she just has topsails, and maybe togallant but no royals, then that was prior to 2015. But it's rewarding seeing your work, Or there have been some Scottish TV shows that I like to watch, because I fell in love with Scotland. It just what an country. I'll see Glenlee in the background, and I go, "That's my daughter."
I have only spent time in Southern Europe, Italy, Spain, and then across the water to North Africa when I was in the Navy. And I've never, my family originally comes from Leicester, England, and from Scotland somewhere. My grandmother was a MacDonald. And I really.
So was mine. Sarah Jane.
Really? That's a bucket list. I need to go over and see Des, and I have other friends over there that I'd like to go see.
Des and Liz are a must.
Yeah.
Once again, talk about just a charming, lovely, kind of self-effacing man. You wouldn't realize that he is the font. You're going. You're going to the Oracle when you talk to
pretty much,
Des, when you talk to Lindsay Philpott, and you get a chance to visit the Oracle. They really know their stuff, and I'm just so fortunate to know them.
Well, same here, and I've only been involved in the industry at large in the capacity that I am for a couple of years, and so I'm John, but I'm Johnny come lately. And and this is something that's important to me, getting to know you and Miko and Des and Lindsay and Skip and there's a bunch more, and I think it's important to let people know who we are.
I think
they need to know, and for it to be historically documented in some capacity, as you as a real person talking, not just, oh well, there was Jamie White, yeah, he did this, he did that.
Yeah, these videos are just wonderful. Let me tell you another quick story on the Glen Lake.
Yeah.
I was rigging at San Francisco at the Maritime Museum, so I was a federal employee, Department of the Interior. I tell you that if you're a rigger, that is the best gig on the planet.
Really?
Because first of all, you're getting government wages. when I was sailing on Bounty, I was $26 a day, not an hour.
Hello.
Now, it was room and board, and it was back in the mid 80s, and I didn't have a real care in the world. I just, it was beer money, right? It was
Glad to be here.
But so when I was hired to do the Glen Lee, and the way that came about was they got I forget how many millions of pounds they got, and members of the board of director would come out to Balclutha because she's one of the 5 remaining Clyde-built ships. There's Mashulu, Balclutha, Falls of Clyde, Pommern, and Glen Lee. That's it. Those are the 5 Clyde-built ships that are still afloat. And so they would come out and they would take photographs, but they were taking particular vantages. They were zeroing in on like a truss boat. Instead of taking a picture of their wife standing next to the shrouds with the Golden Gate Bridge, and I'm going, they're either model makers or authors or something. So I said, hey, my name's Jamie. I'm rigger foreman. Can I help you? If you want, I'll skip a loft and take some photos. And so I did that. And turns out this was one of the directors. And I said, well, tell me about the project. I've heard a little bit about the Glen Lee. And so he gave me a brochure. That night, I sent off a check and became a member, Friends of the Glen Lee or Clyde Maritime Trust and whatnot. So every time someone from the board would come out, they would ask to see me. So that's how I kind of got the gig. Plus the fact that I had rigged Mashulu, which was Clyde built, and done some consulting on Falls of Clyde, and worked on Balclutha. So I had kind of an idea as to the whole Clyde thing, background and the knowledge to do it. And the best part was that I got to travel on a diplomatic passport. I had a red passport.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because to avoid the immigration and the work laws in Scotland and Great Britain, if I came on a diplomatic passport, I didn't have that issue. So the Clyde Maritime Trust reimbursed the US Treasury. So I was getting my same salary that I had on Balclutha, except I was in Scotland. It was like a tour duty, change of station or whatnot. So I had this red passport, and I always joke that, if let's say the masts went in, but they were all crooked or something didn't work out, I was going to say, I'm declaring rigger immunity, take me to the embassy. But the other thing too was 3 weeks before I left, the job is basically over and we're just doing the sailorizing, some final stuff. 3 weeks before the job is over, I get this beautiful envelope. It's like beautiful embossed and whatnot. Her Majesty, the Queen, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm thinking, damn, I'm getting a thank you note. And I open it up and it was a bill for not having a TV license. I had bought a television in a secondhand shop, and no one told me I needed to go to the post office and get a TV license because there's no. That's how they. Yeah, and I'm going. Well, I do have immunity, but I thought, yeah, maybe I shouldn't do that because I could get in trouble when I got back home. But somewhere I have the letter, and I need to frame it. But you'll also like this story about the Park Service. It was wonderful because I took several leave of absences. I started working on Balclutha in 1987, and I left in 2010. But during that period of time, I went and rigged Mashulu, Glen Lee, Lady Washington, was on maiden voyage of the Hawaiian Chieftain, so was able to go out far afield, did the Pirates of the Caribbean stuff. So it was a lot of fun. I've had the fortune of having all of these interesting opportunities. Well, when I did the Mashulu, I needed to take a leave of absence from Balclutha. So I talked to the superintendent, Bill Thomas, at the time, and I said, I have this opportunity, I'd like to do it. And he said, well, okay, I'll approve it, whatnot. He kind of reluctantly did because, you don't want your employees gallivanting all around. But it also is good publicity for the Park Service because they're sending out experts to help rig ships and whatnot. So he did stipulate, he says, I want you to have your maintenance uniform. And if you do any press releases or whatnot, I want you to have the uniform on and represent the Park Service. You know, we're sending out this expert from Balclutha from our park to rig the Mashulu and, you know, restore her rigging. And so, and so I did that. Well, after about 6 months in Philly, you know, I was getting a little anxious, you know, a little, you know, a little carefree. And I thought, you know, what kind of mischief can I get up to? So I had never seen the Liberty Bell. And being in the maintenance of the Park Service, I knew all the form numbers, you know, like, you know, this form or that form. So I had my Park Service maintenance uniform on. I had a clipboard and I went to the Liberty Bell in Philadelphia. I went up to the front desk and I said, kind of tapping the clipboard, I got my truck parked outside with the brazing gear. You got a broken bell? And this poor person's going, oh my God. So they called her manager. And eventually, and I'm thinking, maybe this is not a good idea because and he thought it was hilarious, but my superintendent didn't appreciate it too much.
Like, didn't want you to wear it while you're attempting to commit a crime against the United States historical everything.
I think I mentioned to you yesterday that I had the chance of conducting a seminar at the University of St. Andrews, which is the oldest university.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes back, I mean, my God, like the 12th century, you know? And so I got invited by Dr. Prescott, who was Dean of Maritime Studies Unit at University of St. Andrews. And one of the things they wanted was to have me discuss rigging and handwork, you know, how you do splices and wire seizings, and so that the students, when they were on a site, either terrestrial, you know, looking through the mud, or if they were diving, that they would have an appreciation of what they were looking at, you know, an old piece of rigging. Mm-hmm. So it was wonderful. I spent a weekend up there, gave the class. I did a demonstration. I spliced some wire and did a wire seizing. And at the end of the talk, they accessioned those into their collections. So it's like you with your Senate frame at the Pentagon. I've got a splice that I did that's in one of the oldest universities in the world.
That's awesome.
And it's very rewarding.
Yeah.
Now, the funny part of that was I could have played golf on the old course, you know, because the dean, you know, and I didn't play golf at the time. I didn't start playing golf. I could kick myself.
That's crazy.
This opportunity, but you know, it didn't work out. But with sailing ships, there's, you know, the mystery, there's the romance. You know, people think of, oh yeah, I read Moby Dick and or 2 years before the mast, and wow, you get to actually get paid to do it. I would give anything to do that. And I'm going, well, you know, just go down, talk to the folks at Calmer Nickel, talk to the folks at Lady Washington, California. And there are all these opportunities for people to go out, learn how to sail, and more importantly, to learn the traditions and to carry on the craft of square rig seamanship. So it really is an opportunity, and most importantly, to also become a member of the International Guild of Knot Tiers, I should say, because that group that, you know, I'm in such august company with, you know, following Lindsay and Miko and Des on your talks, and then, you know, Skip, these people that are really titans in the field of fancy work, that, you know, it's humbling for me, and I just want to say thank you for inviting me to talk with you.
Well, I'm really pleased to have you. It's been a lot of fun talking to you, a little bit last night on the phone, and then today face to face, more or less, through Zoom. It's cool that with the technology exists that we can do this. But yeah,
Yep.
I mean, and it's and you're not. I mean, you do fancy work, yes, and you've done wonderful
Yes.
fancy work, but you're really like a sailor, a square rig
It,
sailor.
it's
You
it's
do the
it's
things
it's
that
fun.
would have doing the rigging and knowing how to sail them, and also you end up doing fancy work.
When I was sailing on Bounty, I kept thinking of the Crosby, Still, Nash and Young song.
Southern Cross.
Yeah, Southern Cross. You understand now why you came this way, and still in frame. Okay, so
Oh yeah, the rigging
my,
belt. Yeah.
my pride and joy. So this buckle was used in the film The Bounty. I think it was my shipmate Irwin. It was his bit of gear because he had a leather Gurkha that had these pewter buttons on it that I found he had left on board. So I kind of commandeered that, and I grabbed the buckle off of his belt or someone's belt, put it on this leather belt. And so what we have here is, my marlin spike, my favorite marlin spike. This is an old carpenter's screwdriver.
Yeah.
I cut the slotted part off and then retapered it, and that is the finest marlin spike. It just fits in the hand perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a little star knot here with hoop for bites for a lanyard, and then the knife itself is a lot thinner than it used to be. It used to be quite a bit thicker, but over the years, this is it's got kind of. I'm trying to remember what this is called. Is it some kind of grafting? It's like Spanish grafting or something. I can't remember, but there's strips of leather and then marlin that I wrote around. So it's very knobbly, and it's you can have tar on your hand and it just stays right in your hand. I have the star knot button here, so whenever I grab it, I know that the blade is perpendicular.
Gotcha.
Or grabbing it at night like that, not knowing, so I know that's the way to hold it. And then I have a 28 strand Matthew Walker here.
Cool.
Yeah, and then it still gets better. I have my pliers and some sword matting and a little leather work, and then my tallow horn that I really like. This I know Miko has been doing some.
He's been making some beautiful ones.
Well. So it's a piece of cow horn with Big Turk set I tied on it. There's a lignum vitae plug, the plug that I put down there. It's riveted onto this here, and then I have 100 franc Pacific French franc coin from Tahiti. So, if ever I drown, I have something to pay Sharon to get me across the river Styx. Exactly. But so once again, thank you so much for the opportunity to join, as I mentioned, such august company. I love the work you're doing too, John. It is fantastic, and what a resource for people just getting involved and wanting to learn how to make a Senate frame.
Well, hey, thanks so much. It was a real pleasure getting to know you a bit, and who knows, maybe we'll do this again. Well,
now that sounds wonderful. I'd maybe during the Swift of Ipswich, when we get back, when your spars get built, we can do a little talk down there, because there's going to be quite a bit of fancy work on her. As I mentioned, we're going full 18th century on her.
Cool.
And it'll be fun.
All right.
Bare leads and big blocks. There you go.
Absolutely. Back at you.
Okay. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I certainly enjoyed sharing it with you and having the opportunity to get to know Jamie a bit. That's all for now. More content coming soon, and we'll see you then.